Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Anarchist audio library. Today we're going to be reading an article from Teen Vogue, published September 20th, 2017, written by Lucy Diavolo, titled LGBTQ Institute in Germany was burned down by Nazis. The subtitle is, The resources and data at Institut für Sexualwissenschaft were never replaced. It begins, on January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler was officially appointed Chancellor of Germany. His rise to power ushered in Nazi control of the country and led to the horrors of the Holocaust. Among those targeted by the Third Reich were lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people. LGBTQ people would be sent to concentration camps alongside Jews, the disabled, and many more, but one of the Nazis' first shows of force against Germany's LGBTQ community was an attack on information. On the 6th of May, 1933, Nazi demonstrators raided the libraries of the Institut für Sexualwissenschaft, a German name that roughly translates to the Institute of Sexology. The institute was a privately operated research space for studies of human sexuality. More than 20,000 books were taken from shelves and burned days later in the streets by Nazi youth groups. It was a devastating blow to the life's work of Magnus Hirschfeld, the institute's founder. Hirschfeld, who was Jewish and gay, was a pioneer for rights and liberation in Berlin's thriving LGBTQ community. He founded the institute in 1919 after beginning his career as an activist in 1896 with his pamphlet Sappho and Socrates about a gay man who took his own life after he felt he was being coerced into a straight marriage. Hirschfeld's early publications laid the groundwork for his profile to rise until he became one of the most prominent LGBTQ activists in the world. He even co-wrote one of the first gay characters to appear in a film for 1919's Different from the Others. In 1904, he published a book titled Berlin's Drittes Geschlecht, which translates to Berlin's Third Sex. It was an early look at gender variance in early 20th century Germany, which had a thriving drag scene and a burgeoning transgender community. His prominence as the founder of the Scientific Humanitarian Committee, which began in 1897, and the World League for Sexual Reform, founded in 1928, added to his credibility. But it was his institute that was credited with creating one of the first medical facilities in the world that could provide gender affirmation surgeries for trans people who wanted them. Hirschfeld's well-known name gave him the chance to intervene on behalf of at least one transgender woman arrested for, quote, female impersonation, unquote. That woman went on to become one of several who had the chance to take advantage of his institute's pioneering gender affirmation surgeries. Lili Elbe, the real-world basis for the film The Danish Girl, also underwent surgery there. Unlike Hollywood producers who cast Eddie Redmayne to play Lili, Hirschfeld had no problem giving prominent roles to actual transgender people. Trans activists were given the chance to represent themselves at conferences hosted by the Institute, and they were among the Institute's more than 40 employees. But the Nazis' destruction of the Institute's library destroyed all of the medical records, which contained detailed notes about the nuances of the complicated procedures, alongside untold volumes of thoughts, stories, and studies on LGBTQ people. The Nazi youth harassment of Hirschfeld and the violent attacks against his institute are a frightening mirror of modern-day attacks on LGBTQ centers. As America's far-right movement seems to grow in strength, the story of Hirschfeld's life's work being destroyed is a stark reminder of what is possible. Hirschfeld died 2 years after the Nazis raided his institute. He had been away in France on a speaking engagement when the Nazis came, and he remained there in exile until his death from a heart attack on his 67th birthday in 1935. He never had the time to rebuild his life's work after the fascists reduced it to ash. Hirschfeld understood that LGBTQ people need research in order to better understand the ongoing struggles for liberation, and that research must come from within the community. The ability to dictate the terms of our own existence in the arenas of science and philosophy is vital to the path forward. The Nazi strategy of destroying vital research was intentional since it erased the power of the knowledge contained within. Even now, the current administration struggles to find the adequate information to support its own LGBTQ policies, underscoring the importance of reliable information. The Nazis exploited existing laws to attack the LGBTQ community, but the legacy of their enforcement practices lingered for decades. It took East Germany until 1968 and West Germany until 1994 to repeal the laws Nazis used to persecute LGBTQ people. Modern-day Germany only just officially voided those charges this June. Since this article was a little bit shorter, I'm actually going to include a second article as well, titled Gender Variance Around the World Over Time, also written by Lucy Diavolo, June 21st, 2017. As the transgender community continues to fight for civil rights in the US, one of the most common arguments against progress is that transgender people are a recent phenomenon. Some regard trans people as a symptom of the postmodern condition, or identity politics on steroids. Many claim that the struggle for transgender rights is difficult because the concept is still new to many Americans. But the reality is that transgender people have been striving for their rights in America before the 1960s, when a black trans woman named Marsha P. Johnson is credited by many for throwing the first brick during the Stonewall Inn riots, ushering in the start of a movement. Just years earlier, transgender people protested police crackdowns on their very existence in San Francisco at the Compton's cafeteria riots. Other moments of defiance exist, of course, but remain untold. Half a century of struggle for trans rights in the US is only one thread of a larger global tapestry. Employing a variety of genders beyond man and woman across the world, people who don't identify with the gender they were assigned at birth have been working for centuries to guarantee their liberties since ancient times. The recent explosion of visibility might make the fight for trans rights seem like a recent development in the United States, but it's a fight that has been happening here for decades and around the world for centuries. Understanding that history will only help to inform the ongoing struggle for the liberation of gender-variant people everywhere. Hijas, South Asia. With thousands of years of documented history, Hijas are one of the oldest and best-known examples of gender variance. The word is a blanket term applied to people Westerners might define as transgender, intersex, or eunuchs. Throughout history, Hijas in southern Asia have been associated with sacred powers. They deliver blessings at weddings and births, and are feared for their powerful curses. The focus on their efforts for recognition and rights typically centers on India. That's in part because British rule dramatically changed the lives of Hijas there. The colonial government made the simple act of being a Hijra a criminal offense. Hijas responded by forming their own tight-knit communities and developing their own language. In 2014, the Supreme Court of India followed precedents in Nepal, Pakistan, and Bangladesh in recognizing Hijas as a legally designated third gender. That decision helped people in India seeking legal recognition for their identities. Activists claim it doesn't go far enough, though. Many Hijas still find themselves resorting to begging or survival sex work to get by. In Indian politics, Hijra is still used as a public insult. The next example is Two-Spirit from North America. For an example of colonially stifled gender variance closer to home, one needs look no further than the various gender identities recognized and celebrated in indigenous tribes. Navajo tribes recognized 4 genders that roughly correlate with cisgender and transgender men and women, using the terms Nadlihi for those who quote-unquote transform into femininity, and Dilba for those who quote-unquote transform into masculinity. The Mojave people use the terms Aliha and Huame to describe similar identities, and the Lakota tribe believed the Winkte people among them had supernatural powers like India's Hijras. The Two-Spirit community is experiencing a renaissance of activism lately, but this isn't a recent phenomenon, strictly speaking. Wehua was a famous Yamana, i.e. Two-Spirit, member of the Zuni tribe. She may have been the first out-of-the-closet gender-variant person to meet a U.S. president when she was introduced to Grover Cleveland in 1886. Two-Spirit people in North America have benefited from acceptance within their communities. Already, they have reclaimed a piece of their identities by popularizing the term Two-Spirit in place of the French colonial term berdache. Next is Il Femminile from Naples and Elagabalus from Rome. Even within the boundaries of colonial Europe, gender-variant people existed. Documented in paintings from as early as the 18th century, Il Femminile were individuals assigned male at birth who dressed and behaved like women in Naples, Italy. While largely segregated within the city, Il Femminile were considered a blessing and good fortune upon the families they were born into. To this day, gender-variant pilgrims still venerate the Madonna of Transformation in the country's southern regions. These are not the only gender-variant people in the region's history. Elagabalus was crowned emperor of the Roman Empire in the 3rd century, but insisted that subjects use the term empress and dressed as a woman. According to some historical accounts, Elagabalus may have even summoned the empire's finest doctors in order to pursue a sexual confirmation surgery. In today's Italy, activists can celebrate the recent marriage of Alessia Cinquegrana. Cinquegrana, who was crowned Miss Trans Italy in 2014, is reportedly the first trans woman in the nation to marry a man without first obtaining sexual confirmation surgery. Ancient history and modern struggles. These stories offer up a simple lesson. There are always people who find themselves on the outside of simple binaries. Other examples in the Pacific Islands and South America reinforce this notion. While it might be tempting to apply a label like, quote, transgender, unquote, to all these people, it's important to respect their sovereignty in defining their own identities. European colonialism was a major force in hurting and erasing gender-variant people. Using Western terminology to understand other cultures' gender variance might only result in perpetuating that harm and erasure. Even Americans Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera described themselves in terminology like quote-unquote transvestite, which is rarely used today. Still, the variety of gender expressions and identities is a testament to a key tenet of Western transgender advocacy. They prove that people have rejected restrictive gender systems throughout history and in our modern age. As many of the examples demonstrate, these experiences often exist outside of a binary, not unlike modern definitions of genderqueer or non-binary. This will end the short article Gender Variance Around the World Over Time, written by Lucy Diavolo, June 21st, 2017. If you'd like to follow up on any of the resources or links in the articles, please click the link in the description to learn more. Thank you for reading along with me, and remember that trans and gender variant people have always existed and will always exist. Have a good day.